Well, good afternoon, councillors, those here in attendance and those who might be watching or listening in at their own leisure. It's great to have representations here for our annual general meeting at the City of Launceston. As we do gather here, we recognise that we gather in a beautiful old historical building that also sits on the land of Palawa, that is the original and the ongoing owners. We're going to go through our annual general meeting, and whilst it's not covered by the regs, we will still also be having this available with the video, and that will still be available on our YouTube channel as well, so please be seated. In the opening agenda item number 1, we do have our apologies and our attendance, and noting that it is a sitting week, we've received quite a few apologies from our different levels of government counterparts and some councillors unavailable due to the timing of today's meeting as well. So we thank those apologies as they've been sent through. Declarations of interest at number 2. Do we have any declarations of interest? Because a councillor must declare any interest that a councillor has in a matter before any discussion on that matter commences. Okay, there being none, we'll move forward to the confirmation of the minutes, with the recommendation being that the minutes of the annual general meeting that were held at the City of Launceston Council on the 12th of December 2024 be confirmed as true and correct record. Somebody please to move. Mr. Smith has moved, seconded by Councillor Harris. Any comments or contributions to the minutes?
No, thanks.
Okay, there being none, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Okay, public question time at number 4. 4.1, we have public questions on notice, which are published and available in this agenda. So 4.2, any public questions without notice? Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question really arises from question on notice and the answer to it, 4.1.1.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Could you use the microphone?
Oh, okay. It says, it asks, how many offence report numbers has the council received? So, still not working? How many offence reports? So I'm actually asking Tasmania Police, when you report something, reply with an offence report number. So that's what I'm actually asking there. Question 4.1.3, I'm asking essentially where it talks about when on websites you say most local roads can be used for e-scooters. I'd suggest perhaps you remove the word most local roads, because my understanding of e-scooters, personal mobility devices being used, is that most local roads aren't available for e-scooters. In fact, on the contrary, I think it only takes a centre line or a white line for that road not to be available. So that would be dangerous if you were, certainly in the city, in the central activity area. I can't think of any roads off the top of my head that you could use a scooter on the road. So that's the purpose of that. Question 3. Could you explain, please, in February this year, I asked about assaults and abuse to parking officers, and council responded that it had 127 incidents of threats, abuse and aggression towards parking officers. This year, or later this year in December, you said that since that time, February, there's been 10 reports only. How do we go from approximately 127 in a year to 10 reports in, well, it's dropped from about 10 a month to approximately 1 a month. What would account for that? People not abusing parking officers, or are they just not reporting?
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And I'll just throw that to the CEO, who might need to take it on notice around the reporting systems and why that might be the case. Yeah, so we'll take that on notice. I'm interested to hear too.
It's a glaring difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, in the City Heart, the place plan, the action plan, it talks for replicating scatter crossings at the east end of the mall to the west end of the mall. A scatter crossing, what do you mean by scatter crossing? You're going to reproduce what is a scatter crossing? I don't recognise the east end of the mall having a scatter crossing.
You might see some of these in other parts of the country in which you can cross basically in an X or a square. So you might see some people that already do it outside of Watson's. You might be on one side and you actually cross diagonally. So there's some further work that we're looking to implement, some of the ways in which our community already crosses the street. Yeah.
Thank you. But that would be illegal, of course, to do that.
It very well might be if it's not a scatter crossing at the time.
Okay, thank you. I look at the annual plan of action in the annual report, and there's one action that was cancelled, only one, 42, I think, and that was to undertake community engagement to understand the barriers to use of public transport. And I assume public transport is buses, because I think it's the only public transport. Why is that the only, and why was it cancelled as an action plan?
We'll take it on notice. I'm not
Thank you very much.
sure as to which part you're referencing. Yeah.
Annual action plan 2.5 outputs, which is to undertake community engagement to understand the barriers to the use of public transport. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any further questions without notice? Mr. Baines?
Thank you, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Ron Baines, Kings Meadows. I wasn't actually going to ask a question, but I just thought of something. A few weeks or months back, that the council grants had a few applicants for various things, and some of them had their amount knocked down a little bit, and some of them were knocked back completely. Yet now that we've suddenly found $150,000 to give to a band. How does that work out, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Baines. So we actually had this conversation today in workshop as well around the reallocated funds from other grant positions and sponsorship positions like what we would have had allocated money for Motorfiber to come up into the north, in which didn't happen this year. There's also been some other funding that was allocated, which that event unfortunately hasn't been able to go forward any longer, and that money has also helped to facilitate the $150,000. So there's no extra money going out of anywhere that wasn't already allocated, and there's no extra cost that's coming into our community or the council, as it was allocated to be a part of events that haven't eventuated throughout this calendar year.
So it wasn't actually thought that we might save that for something more worthwhile?
Oh, this is a really impressive way of which our council can be active and reactive and adaptable. And that was something that strategically aligns with what we're looking to do through our events and our annual plan and our 10-year strategic plan. And it was seen to be something that was fitting within that criteria.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks,
Mr. Bates. Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, we'll move forward from 4.2 to 5, which is the annual report. At 5.1, we do have a presentation that will be provided up on the screens, if we may have your attention for just a couple of moments.
The 2025 financial year was another year of bold progress and community-focused achievements at the City of Launceston. Setting a clear vision for our community, the City of Launceston approved its 10-year strategic plan, a roadmap to a thriving, vibrant and innovative future for our municipality. Built on the three key pillars, people, place and prosperity, the strategic plan sets out 27 strategic objectives across areas including economic development, housing, transport, culture, sustainability and inclusion. In a sign of growing investor confidence in Launceston, the council approved a record $469 million worth of development across more than 500 applications, a significant and almost $100 million increase on the previous year, as well as council endorsing the Launceston Housing Plan, which is a long-term strategy aimed at ensuring secure, affordable and well-located housing for all residents in the municipality. The council undertook a major redevelopment of the Invermay and Lindsay Street intersection aimed at improving safety and accessibility for all road users. A total restoration of the Cataract Gorge's Alexandra Suspension Bridge was also completed, restoring or replacing more than 400 individual components, as well as more than 1,200 bulbs. And the council proudly opened the municipality's first pump track. Launceston was named the national winner of the 2025 Keep Australia Beautiful Tidy Towns Award, with the city being recognised for its sustainability initiatives and leading waste diversions and resources recovery efforts. Following a multi-year redevelopment, the council reopened the new and improved Road Safety Centre, a long-standing favourite in the Launceston community, and progressed planning for redevelopments of the Princess Theatre and the NTCA grounds. All told, it's been a transformative year of progress, renewal and collaboration. The City of Launceston is feeling incredibly connected to the community and that the community is well informed. The City of Launceston is a city shaping its future.
Cool, thank you, Kelsey, for helping us out. We'll move forward to 5.2 into our annual reports. We've got the recommendation being that Council receives the City of Launceston annual report and submits one copy of the report to the Director of Local Government and one to the Director of Public Health. It also receives the Launceston Flood Authority annual report, and it notes that the QVMag annual report was received on the 13th of November. May I please have somebody to move the report? Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Palmer. Comments around the annual report? Contributions? Okay, moving it to a comment, Mr. Smith?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Last year I mentioned how important the cleansing crew were to setting up the city each day. And since then, it was mentioned to me that I could have remembered the customer service staff who contribute, and of course the parking officers. We're talking about the 2024-2025 annual report. It appears to be quite a document. It seems to show that the council's fiscally responsible, and it seems to show the council is, if I read it correctly, a $175 million organisation. Second only to Hobart, which is $186 million organisation. The thanks to also, while remembering the morning crew, customer service and parking officers, perhaps the councillors for their leadership and decision making should be mentioned, because they often don't get any thanks from the public. I notice here on page 40, 618 staff, and it says there are 5 apprentices. And I'd have a question. Last year there were 10 apprentices. Did those apprentices graduate and stay within council, or did they move on?
Excellent.
Question you could answer, please.
Yeah, no, we'll take that question on notice. Take that question on notice, thank you.
So at that time, 680 staff, there were 7 more than the year before. Interesting to see City Heart, and this is important, but the annual report notes City Heart. It says it's working, and the City Heart, the place plan now, is worth noting that the place plan has been formulated in recognition of lessons learned during the previous phase of City Heart project implementation. And that was interesting to read. So, all in all, I thank the council for their work, and it's much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. There being no further contributions, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour of accepting the report? Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, we move into notices of motion. At number 6, 6.1, notice of motion from Mr Smith in relation to bench installation at George Street taxi rank, with the recommendation being that council resolves to install a public seat at the taxi rank in George Street. Seeing as though the mover of the motion is in the room, may I please have a seconder? Seconded by Mrs Smith. Mr Smith, would you like to please speak to the motion?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr Mayor. At this meeting, it's different from all other meetings that Council has during the year, in that members of the public can put a motion and they can vote on things. It's quite a different meeting. The public seats, this motion here resolves to install a public seat at the taxi rank in George Street. There was a taxi rank for some, well, it's been there as long as I can remember. And at the end of it was always a bench seat. Google shows it in 2007 as a traditional flat bench seat. Then in September 2022, it changed to some sculptured artwork, which is, I understand, it's called hostile architecture. So instead of a traditional seat, the idea is that you make something that you actually can't lounge around on to dissuade inappropriate use. And this hostile architecture means that essentially it's a standing seat, so you remain standing on your feet, but you lean back against it. It doesn't seem to do the job as I understand a bench. It's very artistic and very detailed, but it's not suitable for elderly or pregnant. It is in a good spot at the head of the taxi rank, so you can watch for taxis coming if there isn't one. But, and ordinarily this would be something you'd have a quiet word to an officer. And I am concerned because I see in the City Heart Action Plan that more of these leaning benches are proposed in the city, particularly where I work. The action plan for where I am in the mall, the West End action plan, the CBD core, is more leaning benches, the reason being it avoids clutters. So I'm not suggesting you remove the artwork. It's very nice and it's interesting, and as it says in the council officer, they're sort of not against putting a seat with it. I don't know whether you'd modify it, but I'd leave that there. That's what it's about, somewhere actually to sit as opposed to lean against. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Smith. Is the seconder any further contributions? Any further contributions from the table or floor? Councillor Walker.
Thank you, and I do rise to thank members of the public for attending our annual general meeting, and especially Mr Smith for his contributions and suggestions via notices of motion. While I do have sympathy with the idea that perhaps it's not exactly a seat and it has been designed as you quoted, as a potentially hostile street furniture, at the same time the City Heart project has contributed various objects, street furniture around the city of varying styles, and personally, you know, I'm all in favour of that. I don't think we need to have a uniform style. So I don't think that is necessarily the heart of the suggestion here. It is actually that a seat be provided, as simply as that, regardless of the existing object. And for that, I am in somewhat support of. You know, it's obviously an area where people do gather, people do wait, just not dissimilar to a bus stop. Where seats are provided. So that's a quite reasonable suggestion, I think. And I would say that although this street furniture has come and is intrinsically tied to the City Heart project, that the providing of a seat at a taxi rank is not necessarily has to be included in City Heart itself, and that it can be something that the council could separately consider as part of their street furniture, regardless of the City Heart project, which does encourage creative and new ways to provide, whether it's dining, seating, foliage and greenery, and various sculptural furniture. So I'm somewhat supportive, and I think the community member for their motion.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Any further contributions? Okay, putting it to the vote then. Oh, yes, and to close. Thank you.
A right of reply would be thank Councillor Walker for his constructive comment. I would note that that street, George Street, is about 9 blocks long. There is only one seat currently in those 9 blocks of George Street, on that side of the street. And it isn't really suitable for elderly. On the other side of the street, there are 2 council bench seats of the traditional side. So 1 traditional on this side that it's on, at the taxi rank, and 2 on the other in 9 blocks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Okay, putting it to the vote. All those in favour? All councillors present. Motion is carried. Okay. 6.2. Mr. Smith with the poster pole installation in the Brisbane Street Mall. Recommendation being to reinstate a poster pole in the Brisbane Street Mall. Mr. Smith is the mover. A seconder? Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For those of you that remember the poster pole in the mall, it was there for about 20-something years until the mall was 1993 to 2018, I think it lived, and it was quite successful. Traditionally, for putting band posters or, I don't know, nightclub posters or comedy shows or caravan show or beer fest or what, or party in the paddock, anything like that. And as it says, if you were to read the background, the idea is if you have somewhere legal to stick up posters, then it sort of makes it harder to do as we've seen, and as it says about the indiscriminate posting on council assets, poles and bins and self-adhesive stickers, as it says here, were put in the election, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of the things around. So, and I don't know whatever happened with that. It's very rarely followed up. The council officers do respond, and I thank them for writing. They say there are online alternatives. And of course there are, but there's the traditional demand existing for posters to be put, so not everything's online. Lost dog posters and things to put up. The officers talk about weathering, commercial use and cleaning. Well, you don't need to clean the thing. I mean, it's quite established that they look after themselves, and it just pulls off as bark when the posters build up too much. And I'm not sure what they mean about weathering. It says it reintroduced clutter. We lost a lot from the mall when the mall was redeveloped in 2018. We lost flagpoles, we lost a lot of bins, kids' play area, less flowers. And there are those that say the mall is cold, sterile and bland. So I think there's room to look at a poster pole. You don't have to get too bent out of shape. Who uses it? It seems to pretty much take care of itself, and we understand the principle, and they're still popular all over the place, particularly noticeable. Melbourne is a big user of them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Anything from the seconder? Further contributions from the table? Councillor Walker.
Thank you.
And Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. And I do certainly remember the poster pole. From my memory, it had a sort of faux heritage architecture top to it as well. It was, and it was well used. Can somewhat sympathise with the mover of the motion. I can't support that we resolve to reinstate the poster pole. I know that there's various towns around Tasmania, you can walk down the main street and there's still notice boards in the main street, which is a great community service, and people put all sorts of notices on there. Whether the mall is still the appropriate place for that or not, I'm not sure. I could see that there may be locations, maybe the Civic Square even is more of an appropriate location for a notice board. So while I don't necessarily support the reinstatement of the poster pole, I certainly empathise with the suggestion.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Harris.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr Smith, for the motion. Like Councillor Walker, I also remember the poster poll, and I'm also a bit conflicted because, to a degree, the poster poll concept is probably quite good in community spaces. I'm just not sure that the Brisbane Street Mall is the best use of that. And maybe Civic Square, maybe even the shopping areas of Mowbray and Kings Meadows could in fact be other areas where such things could be. But they would probably attract event posters rather than bands and hotel outings that people might have, which is probably the history of this poster, poster poll, I should say. So it's an interesting one. Reckon I can't support it because it's going to be in the mall. However, I do think there's something for our team in placemaking to consider how that concept could in fact be applied in other areas, which might make more sense, but the mall is still our central meeting place. So I can understand why Mr Smith has suggested it. But one of the things that did happen with the mall was to try to reduce some of the clutter that was occurring in there. And whilst this is only one item, you keep adding one, you add another one, it all adds up. So, yeah, on balance, I will not be supporting it today, but I thank him for bringing the motion to us.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Any further contributions? There being none, we move it to close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to sum up and say just one thing, when you actually ask for the voting, Mr Mayor, so just to make a point of order that it's not actually when you say councillors to vote, it's actually anyone that's a ratepayer in the room can vote.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Councillors are welcome to, and traditionally in the past, actually they never did. For 20 years that I knew, they never voted. They actually abstained because they left the voting for when it came to the next meeting. So just so it's clear that anyone in the room...
Yeah, absolutely they can.
So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, putting it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is lost. Mr Smith at 6.3 has the social services provisioning in Civic Square, with the recommendation being that Council resolves to review those matters it is responsible for in connection with the operation of social services like food distribution for the poor and those sleeping on the street, as operated in Civic Square, Cameron Street, Launceston. Mr Smith is the mover. Seconded? Seconded by Mr Smith? Okay. Mr Smith, please, as the mover.
Thank you. I suppose in some ways a sensitive subject, the provisioning. You understand what I'm talking about when I say social service. It is the vans that come to the Civic Square to give the people food and something to drink in the street. The services that are run, there's several of them, essential services. They are run by charities. It says in the officer's comments here that these activities enable council to contribute to a vibrant, inclusive city without directly, and it says here, managing or determining the location of charitable service operations. Now, from what I understand is that these services are located and permitted by council, and council gives them a permit, council sets the times they can attend, and probably has some rules on the permit, gives them the location they go. The service, I'm not going to talk about the service issues that there are, only to say that traditionally these services were offered in a building, in a structure, and it was a church property. And then these services were offered, it became external, it was down at Royal Park. And for years, the vans would pull up in Royal Park and everyone would get their food and have a drink and a chat. Then there were some issues and it moved from there, and council permitted it then to move to the Brisbane Street Mall. It was there for a time, 4 years, 5 years, and then there were some issues, and then it moved to the Civic Square, all with the permission and the endorsement of council. Now, quite why it can't be in a structure, in a building, I don't know. I don't know why it has to be on the street. I mean, if it's raining or cold, I just don't see why. I don't see why it can't be seen as something that is more mobile than sitting in an area, because, and I don't want to talk about the problems, but the problems are getting a reputation of being a place with problems. So those that might want to use the service, it's not a nice feeling to go there. It becomes a little bit hostile and owned by some regulars. So if it were to move, there's that aspect to it. It's not overdone, so to speak. If it were to move, it's a natural progression where, as long as it's a monitored place and council agree with it, that those challenging behaviours don't become entrenched and people get too comfortable. That location is very unfortunate as it stands. It's close to a live line of traffic. In fact, the vehicles that do pull up, those that go to the far side of the vehicle, as I saw only the other day, are standing on the street. So there's a large group of people at the end of the street in the traffic. That is not ideal. But there are places it can go, and I'm sure there's somewhere better it can go. And I don't want to see it become a problem issue with the social issues spoiling a very good service because it stayed in the wrong place too long, but perhaps it's time to move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any further contributions to the seconder? Okay, we look for contributions and questions from Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question regarding Mr. Smith's statement there. Does council actually provide, and I think it's the City Mission who set up at the end of Civic Square last time I walked past there, a permit to do so? Or do they simply turn up and council somewhat turns a blind eye to the fact that they are then distributing food from their location? So just what is the process that City Mission and anyone who may operate a food van, not only City Mission but also Strike It Out and others, must go through, if you can explain that to us?
Thanks, Councillor Harris. CEO?
Thank you, through the Chair. Thank you, Councillor Harris. I couldn't give you a direct answer. I'm sorry, I'd have to take that on notice. I would like to think there is a permit process, but I couldn't give you a definitive answer.
Thank you. Contributions? Councillor Walker.
Yeah, and I was going to ask the same question. As Chair of the Homelessness Advisory Committee, I regularly have that opportunity, and our staff have that opportunity to liaise with various service providers, including City Mission, who are regular attendees. And through that communication, there's ample opportunity for both people with lived experience of homelessness as well as those services of providing feedback to council. I have never heard of permits being issued in that regard. That's not to say that they aren't, because some regulation might be appropriate. But similarly, I've never heard any services or people experiencing homelessness express concerns that you have expressed here. Of course, we all want to facilitate the provision of these services, and most often it's the service provider themselves who's in the best position to make a judgment as to what a good location is. Of course, there are service provision, and again, it is City Mission, through you, Chair, that do provide meals in a building in Frederick Street. So there's a combination, and there are other services that do similar. This is another way of providing those, and I'm sure I don't have to justify that to the mover of the motion. But as I've never heard any complaints, and I'm not saying there is none, I've never heard of any complaints. I've never heard from service providers any concerns about the location. I fear we might be providing a solution to a problem that doesn't yet exist. Not to say that it might not exist, but I have not had any feedback in that regard.
Thank you. Any further contributions? Okay, to the mover to close.
No.
Excellent. Okay, to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? the motion is lost. But I do think that in that clarification around that question on notice, there very well might be some further information that will be found for that also. Okay, Mr. Smith, at 6.4, we've got the bylaw for early discount provisions. The recommendation is that Council resolves to make a new bylaw in terms of the current parking facilities bylaw number 2 of the 2023 with the following early discount provisions for the infringement notices issued under clause 7 with penalty units corresponding as shown and published in the agenda. Mr. Smith is the mover, the seconder. Mr. Smith, thank you. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a similar one to appeared last year. On page 404 are 2 parking infringements issued this year. One is for parking in Charles Street. That's $41 infringement straight up due. The other one is parking in front of the museum at Inverest. That's $102.50. But technically, as I see it, pretty much the same offence, which is not paying for parking or having your parking expired. Now, the officers in previous iterations of this motion have said that it couldn't be made into law, or have they turned it repugnant to law, or I forget what they said. But my understanding is that it could have, had it been at the last January meeting following the approval of the AGM, it could have stood up and gone and become law, because it didn't need the onerous work that's ordinarily required for a bylaw, because it was a small addition. Essentially, it was just to offer a discount that if the person were to pay their parking fine as issued quickly, it would be cheaper. And the notes that accompany the good guidance for writing a bylaw actually suggest, when it comes to fines and infringements, the objective is to get someone to pay it quickly, not argue with it. And certainly if you were to take it to court, to take an extreme, you wouldn't pay a penny more. So you take 6 or 12 months, you take it to the magistrate, and if the magistrate found you guilty, you would still only pay $102.50. So there's no disincentive for someone being awkward and being truculent. It is actually, as it stands, Inverest more for a parking ticket than it is Burke Street, Melbourne. And that's the anomaly. But council officers spoke to the bylaw when it was first written, saying that other councils had stopped issuing these discounts for speedy payment. But as far as I see, that I think I write here, Burnley, Devonport and Hobart all offer a discount. And I find even West Coast Council Queensland, Queenstown, at their car park offer a discount as well. So quite what they're getting at there, I don't understand, and they've never said anything to the contrary. The other thing that concerns me is officers say, well, don't do anything with this now. We'll talk about it later. We'll address, and it says again for the second year in a row, an opportunity to address any other improvements. Well, they've never said what they are, and frankly, I think it's a stalling, with the greatest respect to the officer, a stalling mechanism. I see no reason why these discounts can't be put through. I find $102 a very high parking ticket, particularly at Windmill Hill, where it's a cheap parking. So to go from a very low price parking to an exceedingly high fine is unnecessary. And it also says here the officer talks about identifying to improve the system if they were to take it away and look at it. They don't say that adjust. They just talk about improving the system and the processes of the community. I'm not exactly sure what the officer means by that. And penalties will be considered. It's a bit it's not specific enough. So if people were to vote today for this, it would come up at the next, a motion of this meeting would come up at the next council meeting to be a motion, and if it were adopted unanimously there, it then would progress immediately to Hobart and start its process. All of the other onerous tasks aren't required. So I again ask this for the second time. Nothing seems to have happened. The motion, whatever happened to it, was unanimously voted down at the January meeting this year, but at the AGM last year, it was pretty much unanimously, very nearly. I think all councillors except one voted for it. So it's quite odd that it went from one to the other. So please consider that.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Seconder? A question, Councillor Harris.
Just a question then on the process, because it seems to me this is stuck in council process about what we could or couldn't do. Is the mayor or one of the officers able to explain to us in simple terms what the legal aspect has to be for us to apply a discount to an off-street parking ticket as distinct to those that are on the street where we do have a discount applied, just so that we can understand the query really that Mr Smith has raised.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. CEO?
Thank you through the chair, and thank you, Councillor Harris. Of course, not being a lawyer myself, I'm certainly not going to offer you legal advice on the run, so I would take that on notice and draw you back to the legal opinion provided by the Team Leader of Governance on page 31 and page 32 and listed within the agenda.
Question, Councillor Britton.
Thank you. Just some clarity. Do we offer discounts, or is there just a discrepancy between certain car parks as to how much the fine costs?
CEO?
Thank you, Councillor Britton, and I'll deflect to the Executive Leader of Delivery and Performance who looks after parking.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Britton. So the examples provided by Mr Smith are different in the amount because one was an off-street car park and one is an on-street car park, which is subject to different pieces of the legislation.
Just maybe a quick follow-up question. It does say here the parking team's undertaking a review of the parking facilities bylaw. I guess I do sympathise with the intent of the motion, but so I'll ask the question. With that review, are we trying to kind of marry up the price of the infringement across the board? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. So, as Mr Smith has referred to in his motion, it is based on the penalty units which are set by the state government. Now, our ability is to determine how much of that penalty unit do we want to charge. So a full penalty unit, or is it a fraction of a penalty unit? So as part of the review that's been mentioned in the officer response, we'll seek to have that conversation further with council. I will note that we have made some steps in terms of being a little bit more lenient in terms of issuing infringements as well, which has been a really positive step and well received in the community as well.
Thank you.
A further question, Councillor Palmer, then Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr Smith just referred to basically the same motion being tabled at the last AGM, and on page 31, the motion does not meet the procedural requirements of the Local Government Act 1993. So basically, we're in support of it, but it's not going to go anywhere because it doesn't meet the requirements. Could you give some more information on that? Thank you.
The advice that's written there, I obtained from the Team of Legal Services, and he said that was his the response was provided in the January meeting for 2025 where it was lost, and I confirmed with him that nothing had changed in the meantime. So if the motion itself hadn't changed, then the response that we had remained the same.
And just as a follow-up, just looking at the 23rd of January report which went to council, it states that unfortunately the parking facilities bylaw number 2 of 2023 does not offer a discount for early payment as it does in other areas of the city for the same offence.
Councillor Walker, then Councillor Harris.
Yeah, a procedural question, if I may. Thank you, Chair. Are members of this table able to amend notices of motion from the floor, or and part B, if this motion was to be passed, could this motion be amended at the council meeting where this will be presented for voting as an alternative to amending it here?
Yep. CEO.
Thank you through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Walker. We're just double checking, but it's certainly our view that yes, we treat this like any normal motion where any voting member can provide an amendment.
Councillor Harris, the question?
Just a question regarding the effect that not having a discount has had on both the overstaying or the number of infringements being issued in our off-street parking as compared to our on-street parking, since we didn't have a discount for off-street parking violations, which meant you paid $100 compared to $40. Has there been an improvement in the behaviour of people parking, that is paying the fees and also not overstaying? Are you able to offer any advice in that area?
Yeah, I can, Councillor Harrison, thank you. Unfortunately, I don't have any statistics to back up what I'm about to say, but I know in talking with our team leader of parking, and he certainly presented the figures to councillors at a workshop, that we've certainly seen a much greater rate of compliance, which has been pleasing. So an unintended consequence, I suppose, of not having an early discount is we have seen better compliance across the city, which has a better flow-on effect for what we're intending to do with parking across the CBD, getting traffic moving, more and more people in and out of the CBD, which is obviously having a good impact on hospitality and retail within the CBD as well.
A question, Mr. Smith.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The officer mentioned section of the Local Government Act, the part that says it can't be carried into law. That relates to 156. Local Government Act relates to how it would be handled as a motion at a successive meeting if this would appear at the next meeting. That does not relate to this meeting. So this is not a motion that the Local Government Act would relate to. This, if it were approved at this meeting as a motion adopted, it would then be effectively reincarnated or reborn at a future meeting. That condition would apply to that meeting differently from an AGM. Would that be my understanding, please?
It's the officer's opinion that is true.
I'm not here today, and that wouldn't be a reason not to vote for it today. Thank you.
CEO.
And another question. The officer said something along the lines of more lenient. Could you expand on that? Because what I understand, you can't you couldn't voluntarily, the council couldn't give its own discount. It couldn't just say, well, I tell you what, I'll give you a discount, because that would affect the future engagement of the monetary penalties. You could never, you'd have scuppered any chance of ever enforcing it in the future if you'd done some kind of, for want of a better word, deal to negotiate. You would effectively prevent any chance of enforcement in the future. So you don't have the liberty to make your own discount. It would have to be through the bylaw process.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Smith. I should have clarified there. So we're not talking leniency in terms of the amount of the infringement. It is whether or not to infringe. And by that I mean if somebody has had their parking expire 30 seconds ago and we can see them running down to their car, we would choose not to infringe in that instance. So adopting a common sense approach.
Exactly. Cool. Thank you. Now I've got Councillor Walker with a hand up.
To speak. Thank you, Chair. I stand to move an amendment to the motion to the recommendation that removes the word resolves and replaces it with the word consider, the first word of the recommendation, and in which case hopefully get support around the table and from the gallery. In moving this forward, I think the intent is clear. I think, as evidenced last year, councillors were somewhat supportive of the concept, and if we can move this forward to a future meeting where we can have a more considered response, then it will still, this is where that section 156 applies. It would need an absolute majority, which it did not receive at the start of this year. So I'm I can't vouch for the validity of your table that you've inserted, and I do, accept that as a good example. But by replacing the word resolve with consider, it would read that we consider to make a new bylaw in the terms of the current parking facilities, blah, blah, blah. I shouldn't have to read it all out. And in that way, we can move this forward without feeling as though we have imposed that decision today, even though it does have to go to another meeting. Sure. I'll look for a seconder. Thank you.
Just a second. Councillor Walker, so are you proposing to continue to include the table or just to consider a bylaw and then...
Thank you for asking the clarification. Just consider to make it a new bylaw. I'm happy to leave everything else there because we're only considering it at this stage. This motion to consider would then be taken to the next meeting. It would be there, then open for further amendments, removals, additions, or winning on the day by its own merits. So I was just looking to capture the mood of the room with that amendment.
But the recommendation would still state that it considers to make the bylaw on the balance of the table.
At this stage, yes, for simplicity, yes.
Right. So we wouldn't need a mover and a seconder if we had permission from the original mover and the seconder for the amendment.
Mr. Mayor, first I'd have a question and then a clarification. Firstly, the question, does anyone know that the officer keeps writing that, and this is how they word it, the motion under consideration is not one that can be carried into law, and that's what they said on the 23rd of January. I wonder what particularly it was of the motion as it was written that couldn't be carried into law. They never actually said what the bit wasn't. And the second question, let's handle that. First question.
We'll have to take that on notice.
Okay, thank you. The second is Councillor Walker suggests changing a word, and I'd consider that yes. But particularly strong the word that seems to jump out to me, that the officer seems to stress, is intention. So when he talks about 156, motion of intention to make a bylaw. Now there's something that gives strength to that word. Councillor Walker would typically consider, but if this were to appear at a future meeting, perhaps there'd be a possibility then for it to go to another meeting if there was something defective in the legislation. But intention is a word. Would Councillor Walker perhaps consider the word intention as being one, which is considered? Would you have a problem with that?
Councillor Walker, so we have a live amendment.
No, I suppose I'm seeking to capture the mood of the room where I'm sure there is a good will towards what you intend, but I do think the word even intention is a little too strong. That the council has an intention to make a law sounds to me very much like it definitely is going to do that, whereas I just think that council considers to make that we're just taking it under consideration at this stage. So my amendment motion stands. Sorry. It doesn't have a seconder.
No, I look to the mover and the seconder.
I'm afraid my eyesight isn't good enough to read what it actually says.
It's just changing the resolves to considers.
The first word says consider. I can't. I'm afraid one says considers. Yes. Okay.
Sure, and I will just check with governance around, with permission of the mover and the seconder, a word could be changed. Yeah. An amendment, it's not an alternate, so we're okay with that. So it would still be Mr. Smith's motion that's been amended by only one word? Or does it now become Councillor Walker's with the amended word with the permission of the mover and the seconder? Yeah, I think it's still Mr. Smith's. Yes? Okay. Yep, they've approved. Approved the amendment. Okay. Cool. Thank you. To speak, Councillor Harris.
To speak to the new motion and just to perhaps put Councillor Walker's mind at rest with the table that's in there. Quick time of calculation. The current penalty unit is $202. So hence the current figure that says it's a penalty unit of 0.5 means it's $101, which aligns with Mr. Smith's comment. If we do indeed have column 4, the reduced penalty, if you pay within 14 days, 0.2 will make that $40.40, and within 28 days, 0.3 makes it 60 and 60 cents. So the figures do seem to be relatively accurate, and I'll assume that the rest of the table is similarly constructed. So I do think we can accept the motion with the table as meeting the intention of what is there. And as such, I think for us to consider this change should be done with all the information, including the statistics, rather than the officer's retention and gut feel of what has happened, because sometimes we can have unintended consequences, but I do think considering it is something we should be doing as a council. So at an AGM, we think we take the motion to our next meeting or a future meeting if it can't get in the agenda. So I'll leave it at that and support it at this stage.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Further contributions? Mr. Smith to close.
No, thank you. Mr. Mayor, I think only to say I'm grateful for Councillor Walker and Councillor Harris, who actually contributed greatly to making sense of that and making use of it. So I read the room and I would ask you to vote for it.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, putting it to the vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thanks, Mr. Baines. Thanks, Mr. Christensen. Thank you. Okay, 6.7, we have got Mr. Smith's closed circuit television, CCTV, with the recommendation being that Council returns to the doctrine that the primary role of Council's closed circuit television, CCTV, camera network of 27 cameras in public safety over asset security, and undertakes the following action on CCTV network coverage in the Brisbane Street Mall, Launceston. A, consideration be given to adjustments to existing camera locations, potentially relocating and lowering cameras closer to the ground. And B, adding more fixed CCTV cameras that may be required to cover parts of the pedestrianised approaches where there is currently no coverage. Mr. Smith as the mover. Seconder? Second, Mrs. Smith. Mr. Smith.
Mr. Mayor, this is asking that Council returns to the doctrine of having cameras and treating them for the purpose of public safety. I was concerned, and you'll look at the history, that in 2011 I moved a motion to more cameras, but the project was said by Office to be already in progress and redundant, so I let that lapse. Then another motion in 2021. Office actually said there's a review underway, and I withdrew that motion from the meeting. There was another question in 2017, and then the Mayor, as it happens, brought a motion and it asked for options for system improvements and focus on community safety. And to my horror, the tone of everything that Council had ever said publicly about the purpose of closed-circuit television cameras in Launceston shifted from public safety and public confidence to asset security, which I still haven't got over. I just can't imagine why. And it gets worse when in the officer notes, they say, in officer comments, they say, public safety is not a core function of local government. And I just can't rationale that. I think of everything Council does, pretty much it's safety, road rules or health rules or anything's all for public safety. It's not about protecting assets or just looking after things. I can't, and I've got to be very careful I don't criticise the officer, but this is quite an about turn that everything, and then to use that as to not look at the problems and the issues that we have and how they might be adjusted, particularly where I work in the Brisbane Street Mall, I find it concern. over the years, I've ended up, through RTI requests, getting footage or still shots of what cameras actually see. And of course, when I look at them in the most basic terms, and I have no particular background, but some of them are in front of trees, you just can't see anything. The shrubbery's grown, you can't see the footpaths in the mall, the entrances aren't covered. I mean, it's just a litany of camera shots that are just embarrassing. This is 4.3 meters high, you just can't see anything. A stick insect of a person at the bottom is just hardly visible. It really, for security cameras, they don't work. If you're talking that this is for, and how do you describe it, asset protection? I don't know what your assets are that you're securing. Is it the bins and the poles and whatever's cancelled, and not people? I don't understand. But anyway, so that's why this motion in two parts here asks you to stop saying that it's just for asset security and return to saying that it's actually about public safety, and that's what cameras, because that's what you told the federal government when you got a lot of money to set up the system. That's what you told the state government, and that's what you tell the paper and the press when you make media releases. You say it's about reassurance of the public and securing the area. The second part is adjustments to existing cameras. That therein lies half of them are pointing or stuck behind trees, they don't work. And then adding more cameras is that, you'd be surprised what parts of the mall, and I don't want to say which there are, but there are 6 entrances to the mall. And I don't want to say to what degree they're covered or not, but suffice it to say, in the entrance, when one of the council workers was assaulted back in January this year, there was no footage whatsoever. There was an entire diamond mall. Harris Scarf entrance is one. There's St John Street, 2 entrances on each side of the footpath. Charles Street. Maya has an entrance onto the mall. Proud's are jewellers. And I don't want to go any further about the extent of the coverage, but suffice it to say, I believe that more fixed cameras are required. I look at the City Heart place plan, and it says, again for the area I was talking before, CBD Core West Action Plan, it actually in part 3 of now action was to consider CCTV installation further. So I don't know what assets you want to cover if it's not to protect the people in that area. The officer writes that the primary purpose of council is to support facilities and assets management. I'd ask a question. Is that one officer's opinion? And this is a question, if I may, Mr. Mayor. Is that one officer's opinion? Is that a complete change of outlook on the purpose the council installs the CCTV assets?
Sure. Thank you for the question. CEO?
Thank you, through the chair. That would be the professional opinion of the administration.
Thank you. I understand when cameras are placed, how it works is because council essentially manages all of the property and it's all council property. So for police, it would be too hard to put cameras. So council install them and they put them up because they just don't have to go through a convoluted process of installation and landlord permission for the land. It's easier if council do it themselves. And then, of course, it's made available. And I want to be quite clear where the officer writes here that they talk about real-time. Nothing here I've asked for is real-time monitoring. Nothing is continuous monitoring. And the way it works now, there's no active or real-time monitoring. It's boring and you couldn't do it and there's nothing to see. It is, of course, all about passive review. So when someone's assaulted or something happens, that's what it's for. So the officer seems to get waylaid on that. We won't ask for an extension. That's plenty. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Further contributions? Anything from the seconder? From the room? Councillor Harris.
Just to start with a question, first of all, just doing some research, it appears the state government is a central role for public safety in Tasmania, but council has a secondary role to address day-to-day community safety needs and local risks. So I'm just keen to understand from a council officer point of view how they would see the installation of CCTV I'm assuming they're saying it should be the state government, if it is to in fact be safety, but it clearly says that we should have address day-to-day community safety needs. So I'm just trying to understand how they see the interplay between state and local councils with CCTV. And you're looking very like you're not going to answer that one.
CEO.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Harris. Now, I've probably got a confused look on my face. I'm trying to wedge sort of where your question is going and how to answer it effectively. In essence, then, for us internally, we don't want to blur lines. We're not trying to remove ourselves from any community good or social good, not by any stretch at all. And I don't think that's what's being asserted in this situation, but we certainly don't want to be confusing ourselves with services such as Tasmania Police, for example, who very clearly have a very active role in serving and protecting the community. Some councillors may recall, and I appreciate that not everyone in the room has the benefit of council workshops, but some councillors may recall when we discussed this very matter at a previous workshop around CCTV cameras and the rationale provided by staff, particularly around our current network, which is almost somewhat redundant equally, noting the age of that network, the age of the cameras, the maintenance requirements. And some councillors may recall at that time we did advise at some point in the near future we'll be looking to update that system and use a more modernised system, particularly using a system such as AI. There are other councils around the country, and I can't think of one in particular, I think it's Queensland-based, that actually made quite a bold move in moving into the community safety space and using AI cameras, and it created quite an uproar in terms of privacy laws and a whole range of things that council found itself in quite a significant legal minefield, which cost that council millions of dollars to navigate through privacy law issues. Not saying it's impossible, but we are cognizant of that. Therefore, we're very cognizant of what we say publicly if we're going to move into that space and what complications that may create for us. So I understand the intent of the motion being put forward by Mr. Smith, but I would draw councillors back to particularly workshop briefings where we've provided advice around the current network, what we certainly use it for around asset observations, so we can actually monitor what we have, what condition it is in real time, and also vandalism in real time as well, and have that record. But knowing we will be presenting at some point an update to our CCTV network for a whole range of reasons. For example, most recently, the installation of the AI flood cameras, which allow us in real-time monitoring to track flood levels in rain events to ensure we've got complete eyes on the South Esk and the North Esk and the Tamar River as well. So cameras can be more than just asset protection and people protection. They can also help forewarn us in relation to major events equally.
Thank you, CEO. Councillor Britton.
Thank you. I think where councils step in for safety are things that, in my opinion, would be a job site. We need to make sure appropriate high-vis cones, all that sort of thing. At restaurants and cafes, we have food restrictions and you need food licences and things like that. I think it's in my personal opinion, a bit of a far cry for us to step into the social surveillance area. Not to mention that it would be incredibly expensive, and I think we'd be taking on some sort of responsibility that I don't think we're resourced for and ready to take on. I understand the intent of the motion, and I know it's been spoken about several times in council, as has just been pointed to. We can do better with our CCTV, and I think that it is an intent to do it. And perhaps I'll just end with a question. Where is the motion? I believe you put the motion forward, Mayor. Where are we at with your motion that was about CCTV? And apologies if I have already been told this and have forgotten.
No, it's in, which is good around the reporting that we get in our meetings in the CEO's network, that review has formed the opinion of which Mr. Smith has grabbed some great details from, and it will further be utilised to progress that conversation forward next, as the CEO did say. So that review's been completed, and it's come to a point of which has now alerted the council as to what and where and how we do what we do, and now it will be in the formation of where we go to next. I think that Mr. Smith's motion would perhaps accelerate that process, but that's where that particular review has landed. Thank you. A question, Mr. Smith, or to close? A question?
A question. just read while I was sitting there, I've noticed that the number one, there's a part of it doesn't quite make sense, because if I read what I wrote, which is page 407, there's a few words that I wrote that don't appear, not that it necessarily get up today, but if it were to, the words missing are public streets is. So there's 3 words missing. Would it be possible, because it's actually been given as different wording, would it be acceptable to change what's written there to what appears on 407? Is that a change that could be considered? In essence, it says a camera network of 27 cameras in public streets is safety over asset security. And as it's written here, it says incorrectly, network of 27 cameras in public safety over asset. It doesn't even make sense. So
No,
those 2 missing words, public
Okay.
streets is, could they be put in?
So please just reiterate what you're saying there as we follow
So
the sentence.
This is number 1.
Yep.
So it goes, returns to the doctrine that the primary role of council's closed-circuit CCTV camera network of 27 cameras in public streets
Streets is missing.
is.
Streets is safety over asset.
And that actually makes more sense.
Yep. Yes.
Point of order, Chair. I'm not sure if a mover can modify his own motion once he's moved it. As much as we'd like
just
to
checking with governance, because I think it's an error in the way in which it's been. It's in the transcription, so I think it is. Great question though. But yes, because I think it's not actually changing the motion, it's just changing the facts that it was put in with a couple of missing words. Yeah, so 27 cameras in public streets is safety over asset security. So, Mr. Smith, if you're able to just double check that.
I couldn't see that in a million years, Mr. Yes, thank you. Yes, that's as appears on page 407 in the attachments. Thank you.
So the camera network of 27 cameras in public streets is. Yeah. Okay. Okay, and that's okay with the seconder, but we understand it's a transcription issue. Okay. Councillor Harris to speak.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I think it's interesting because adding additional words does seem to make the motion a little bit more specific about only the cameras in the streets. And I think we need to be very careful, because if you go back when closed-circuit TV cameras required members of Neighbourhood Watch to sit in the police station to watch what was happening around those cameras, we have come a long way from those days. We talk about AI being able to interpret what is being seen as normal and not, and then report by exception, which is probably a much better place to be. However, I think council has to be very careful that it has installed cameras for a particular reason. I do recall the conversation of the camera on the Patterson Bridge, that's the new bridge to Trevellyn and Riverside, is there for asset protection and shoots up the gorge. And the footage on that cannot be used by the police to identify a stolen speeding car that might be zooming over the bridge in its line of vision. So we have to be really careful having installed cameras for a particular use, that they can't be used for others, for other matters, including what may well be public safety. So this is a bit of a difficult one, but I think I'll be voting against this motion, despite the fact that, again, I can understand the intent of it, and perhaps the issue that you identified in the Brisbane Street Mall, where there are dead spots, may be identified and collected and resolved during the implementation or otherwise of Councillor Garwood's motion. But I think at this stage, we've just got to be careful not to mix the two up too much. And I think I'll err on the side of caution and vote against this motion today.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Any further contributions before we close? Mr Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just want to be clear, because the councillor did start to touch on surveillance. I heard AI mentioned, live monitoring. There's nothing. If you were to read this, it's when council were to install a camera, the purpose of it is to be looking to protect the public, and that's what it will be aiming for. It's not about looking to check on bins or other things like that. And I can't see why the council all of a sudden, including the CEO, says that the safety is not the consideration. If it weren't the consideration, then let it not be. But the most logical place to put cameras in a street would be where the people are. And clearly from this, from what I've told you and what is written, they need adjusting at the very least. What did I say, 4.3 metres high, they're just too high. And that there are blind spots, as we know. But it is disingenuous. There's nothing here about live monitoring, not in the least bit interested, but I am concerned all of a sudden when council says, well, we're not responsible for, that's not our role to put them where people happen to be, we're looking at trees or assets or poles or whatever it is. I think that's a wrong mindset. It concerns me greatly. And I'm frankly quite surprised from the Launceston I know to suddenly say, well, cameras are nothing to do with public safety, particularly when you've said so much publicly, to get the funding to put the things there from the federal government, from the state government. And Albert Van Zetten says so much about public safety, appears in the newspaper with photographs of police officers and the new system, and they show the scene of what can be seen from them. I am concerned that for all that time, at least 25 years I know of that I've worked there, that suddenly that it's not about public safety and it's about asset protection. It's absolutely extraordinary. But anyway, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr Smith. Okay, putting it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? So those, we'll ask the room, because we're at a tie, I'll ask those abstaining. All right, we're going to take the vote again, just to ensure, as Mr Smith said at the start, everybody who's a ratepayer in the Launceston municipality has the right to vote, not just the councillors. Yes, that's you as well. Okay. All of those in favour? I will do the count. 6. Those against? 3, 4, 5. Those abstaining? Okay, so it's been... And yes, abstaining is a loss? So the motion is lost. But it will be further discussed in terms of... CCTV will be further discussed. Well, that was a bit of fun. Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for your attendance at the City of Launceston AGM. We close the meeting at 6:49. Thank you. Next council meeting will be held next week.